What's going on YouTube? It's TH back again with another video, and today I'm giving you my updated interior defensive line rankings as we get closer and closer to the 2023 NFL Draft. Hopefully you guys are excited and enjoyed today's video. Be sure to hit that like button if you do. If you're right here want to see more draft coverage, more football content in general, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. And of course, leave me your interior defensive line rankings down below in the comment section. This is an interesting class. It's really not as deep as maybe it once looked like going back, 5, 6, 7 months ago. But nonetheless, I still think there's a lot of talent and then some interesting honorable mentions that we'll talk about. So kind of hitting on that, we'll start 5 up to 1 with my, top interior defensive linemen. And then we'll throw out 5 honorable mentions. And I may even throw out some other names in there that I could see going somewhere in the top 100. But let's go ahead and start. We kick things off with Mozzie Smith. Bruce Feldman's #1 freaks list. And he's 6'3", right around 340 pounds. Gotten better year over year. And then even this past season at Michigan, week over week, as a run defender. So that's really exciting. And I know there's people who buy into maybe some upside as a pass rusher. It's not something that I've seen. Now, granted, when you're that twitch up of an athlete, sure, there's definitely some promise. There's definitely some potential to tap into. But I'm looking at this guy solely as someone who, with consistency, definitely is a really good run defender. And then maybe, just maybe, that athleticism leads him into figuring it out as a pass rusher. But I really haven't seen a deep moveset. Really, when people describe good run defender with sneaky pass rush upside, I think of Keanu Bett, my #4 interior defensive lineman. And like I said, I see it a whole lot more. Just as polished as a run stopper, and if anything, I think a little bit more consistent from that front. But then when you just talk about him as, a pass rusher, I just think you're getting more of it down in and down out. I mean, you're talking about a pass rush win rate north of 13% at Wisconsin this last year, using PFF's grades here, pass rush grade at 83.5. So, and also on top of that, really took a big step forward in 2022. Overall grade at just under 62, and then that bumped up to just about 74 overall. So good to see him take that leap in his final year at Wisconsin. And it was a schedule where he played some stiff competition, right? Like Ohio State, Illinois, Northwestern, Michigan State, Michigan, Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska. So, a really interesting schedule, and I think that bodes for enough level of competition to suggest that that leap to the NFL level is not going to be outside his comfort zone, right? And both these guys are coming from the Big Ten. They both played good schedules, so it's not really a huge point of differentiation between Benton and Smith. I think really it comes down to, if you see Mozzie Smith as the high-level run defender with pass rush upside, you are projecting that because he's a good athlete. Benton may not be as twitched up of an athlete as Smith, but he's the guy who does that right now. So it comes down to what you see now versus what you think these guys could be down the line. But they're both two, nose tackles that, the other guys ahead of this are all, to me, like 3 techs, 3-4 DNs. These two are true nose tackles. So it comes down to what you're looking for on the inside and what your scheme is. And I still ultimately think they both go in the top 60. I like them both a lot. And when these are the top 2 nose tackles, they're going to go and get boosted up boards because it's Benton and it's Smith, and then you're kind of waiting a little bit. And we'll talk about some more of those other nose tackle specialists on the honorable mention screen. Then Brian Brazee comes in at 3. I'll talk about him and Kalijah Cansey 2 and 3 here. Because, again, similar to what Benton and Smith, are you making this pick with 2 years down the line in mind, which you should make every pick with that in mind, but are you buying into the potential that is Brian Brazee, or do you need that immediate impact that is Kalijah Cansey? And, it's same thing with Smith and Benton, like now or in 2 years' time. What are you trying to figure out, and what are you making this pick with a thought of in mind? So Brazee, not a whole lot when it comes to him being a pass rusher. Also missed a lot of time at Clemson, both with injuries and then obviously the family tragedy this past season. But man, 6'5", 300 plus pounds, and moves really, really well for how big he is. And I mean, the athleticism was never anything in doubt. And if anything, it was something that I was hearkening on over and over and over again. When he started to slip outside the top 10, I was like, I don't know. I just don't know enough about this class to say Brazee shouldn't be one of those guys. Now we have a more well-rounded view of the class. And, I still think he should go somewhere once you get into the 20s. You start thinking about, hey, is Brian Brazee a fit here? So maybe he's not a top 10 guy like he once was. Part of that is because I was anticipating a breakout this year at Clemson, missed a lot of time, and even when he was on the field, didn't take that major step forward. He is a good run defender, in my opinion, and part of that is just because he moves so well. Like, he can shoot gaps and be quicker than guards, so he can blow up some run plays. But yeah, next to nothing when it comes to him being a pass rusher, which then on the other side, Kalijah Cansey is basically the complete opposite. At the NFL level, 6'2", 280. He's not going to give you much in the way of being a run defender, also short arms. Like, this is not a guy that has this twitched up build, something that's, out of a lab or anything like that. Brazee is much, much closer to being that guy. But nevertheless, talking about the 40 and where he has, 1 percentile arm length, had to look that up, literally 30 and 5/8 inch arms. That's 1 percentile for defensive tackle. So not ideal. But then 99th percentile, obviously, in the 40-yard dash, because he set the combine record with a 4.67 time. And dude, the quicks are there. I mean, this guy is getting into guards before they're out of their stance. So it comes down to what traits and what your cutoff is. Do you care about arm length, or you care about explosiveness? And also, it comes down to your roster. Like, so many people have said, dude, Kalijah Kancey next to Jordan Davis would be insane in Philadelphia, because Jordan Davis he's a refrigerator, man. He's going to eat blocks. He's going to stop the run. He's going to plug the middle. And that alleviates the major weakness that I think Kancey's going to have at the next level, because he's not going to get off blocks. He's not going to throw dudes away, and he's just not all that strong. Like, even, comparing Kancey to Aaron Donald, I think is kind of foolish, because, one, it's just like comparing a wide receiver to Tyreek Hill just because they're fast. Yes, he's an undersized defensive tackle, but chasing an outlier here and comping someone to an outlier is dangerous. I mean, no one's calling Will Anderson Lawrence Taylor, right? And I think we'd be foolish to say that. So I understand why people are saying that, and there are similarities, but also when Aaron Donald gets his mitts on you, good luck. You're done, especially as an interior offensive lineman. Like, if he's truly lined up in the middle, and the Rams have moved him around, but when he's lined up on the inside and he gets his hands on you first, you're done as a guard. You're toast, and that's where the double teams come in, So Kancey does not have that in his wheelhouse whatsoever. But again, the quicks, getting into a guard and disrupting plays. And because of that, maybe I'm underselling his run-stopping ability, but I think Brazee at 300-plus pounds, athletic ability, and enough strength, I think you're getting a lot more of a run defender there versus Kancey. But immediately, you are getting someone who is a polished pass rusher, has a full moveset, and knows how to stack and play chess with an opposing offensive lineman. Brazee is nowhere near that, So now versus later, run stopping, immediate potential versus the immediate pass rush juice you get from Kancey. It comes down to what your team needs. And again, I think all these guys are 3 techs. And then Brazee, I feel really comfortable with if you're like Philadelphia 4-3, and he's playing D tackle. Kancey, in that case, if you're running 4-3, and it's early down situations, which, I hate saying 3-4, 4-3, because more often than not, nickel is your base. But just going along with the, metaphor for the sake of the example, Kancey's going to need a guy next to him in a 4-3 defense that's going to eat blocks. And that's where the 3-4, like, if you have a nose tackle out there, you can kind of bank on that guy already being on the field. 4-3, I mean, you put him in Dallas, right? Like, would his movement skills be awesome paired up with Osa Odigizua? Yes, but are they going to get pushed around the middle of the field? Absolutely, at least in my opinion. So it comes down to what the fit and what your roster has. And then, of course, that takes us into Jalen Carter. And, there's not a whole lot I can say here that you haven't already heard, right? I mean, to me, taking away the off-the-field stuff, because I'm not a lawyer, and that is not my realm of expertise by any stretch. Obviously, there's some maturity questions there, and things that teams are trying to figure out right now in the interview process. But he's not going to serve jail time, which is certainly good for his draft stock. But just as a player, he's the best non-quarterback in this class to me by a hair over Will Anderson. And part of that is baking in, I've seen what Jeffrey Simmons does to change a defense as an interior pass rusher. I've seen what Aaron Donald can do to change the complexion of the Rams defense. I've seen, what these interior pass rushers, these true disruptors, Christian Wilkins last year before the Dolphins edge group started to figure it out. Dexter Lawrence this past year with the Giants. I know Leonard Williams is there too, but hopefully I'm painting the picture here. You get one of these interior true difference makers, and it changes the entire complexion. It's a huge force multiplier. Edge rushers have that same impact. I think about Von Miller in Buffalo, but I just think it's a little bit of a greater force multiplier from the inside. So to me, I'd go Carter over Anderson if we're throwing away the maturity concerns and those things that hey, I'm not interviewing these guys, so I don't know. But Carter's a freak, man. Yes, his pro day showed up a little overweight, but he never looked like that and never looked sluggish on the field. So I think part of that is him trying to transform his body a little bit to get to the NFL level. Maybe he was told he needs to add weight. I hope he just goes back to whatever he was playing at Georgia, but also trying to work through everything off the field. Maybe the workout regimen hasn't been there. Maybe he hasn't found that, personal coach, right? A lot of these guys get, offensive linemen, they'll get like off-season coaches and whatnot. Maybe Carter hasn't found that. I don't know because I'm not interviewing the guy. But nonetheless, talent's there, throwing the tape. He can win with power. He can win with speed and finesse. There's not many big guys like that move like he does. He's good against the run. He's good against, he's obviously good as a pass rusher. And he's come up in big moments for Georgia too. Like he's got that it factor about him. So yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot I can say about Jalen Carter that you haven't heard already. The man is a freak. It's just, how do you feel about his off the field concerns? And ultimately, I wonder how teams feel about that as well. Moving on to my honorable mentions. We'll go top to bottom here. Gervon Dexter, pretty good and pretty solid, run defender when it comes to his PFF grades, which is good. And, 6'6", 310. You'll eat blocks, and because of that, you'll get relatively good grades in their system because you're accounting for a lot of space and a lot of bodies. And I do think he's come in the right direction. Like, I think he's made strides in the right direction. But as a pass rusher, man, it's just flashes. But that's what people are going to draft him for. Like, nobody's drafting Gervon Dexter because, oh wow, we're going to get you're going to draft Benton or Mozzie Smith before you draft Gervon Dexter to play the nose. And I don't think Gervon Dexter really is a nose. Maybe he could fit that, but 4-3 D tackle, 3-4 D end. Like, I kind of thinking that's where his spot is. But the athleticism's there too, and that's what makes him so interesting because 6'6", 310, good athlete, and you see moments of it where it's like, okay, there is something that can be coached up. There is something within that guy's body that could make him a really dangerous pass rusher. And maybe I'm underselling the run stopping ability, and maybe he could play on the nose and be lined up over center, so that makes his matchup that much easier. Primarily at Florida, he was playing in the B gap, so again, I'm kind of thinking the same thing at the NFL level. Lots of flashes, but really, even those flashes, it's not like you talk about some of these guys and it's like, this guy was awesome in this game. Like Zach Harrison, we're not talking about edge rushers, but Zach Harrison had games where it was like, wow, what a day for Zach Harrison. Dexter never really had that, and it wasn't even really drives where it's like, dude, Dexter blew that whole drive up. There was nothing that whoever Florida was playing was going to do about that. It's like a play. It's a rep. And then that's what you're kind of holding on to. Is there special somewhere in his body? Absolutely. But it's going to take some coaching to kind of get that on a down in and down out basis. I think Carl Brooks, this may be a little surprising considering he's above a guy from Texas and Wake and Baylor, and Jaquelin Roy's not on here. I think he's going to end up being probably a nose tackle. He's coming out of LSU. Didn't really have a great combine. That's why I'm thinking he's probably a nose, and among others. But Carl Brooks, man, played on the edge at Bowling Green and was a phenomenal pass rusher for them, which someone who's north of 300 pounds, that shouldn't be the case. And also, just in case you're wondering, I thought about adding Tomiwa Adebawore and Carl Brooks, and really the point of differentiation for me was Adebawore, I think he's going to play 3-tech or wider, so he'll be 3-tech to a stand-up edge rusher. Or Carl Brooks is going to be a 3-tech, 3-4 DN, or move inside with a 4-3 D tackle role. So do think that's the role that Brooks plays, similar to Dexter and some of the other guys that I mentioned before. But man, I just love the pass rush juice that he plays with. And, at the Senior Bowl, he showcased, I'm coming from a small school, but I can hold my own. So seeing him be able to do that and handle that level of competition makes me feel confident that you draft this guy in the third round, he's not going to feel out of place. And you look at some of the other defensive linemen. I'm a Steelers fan, so I'm a little biased here, but like DeMarvin Leal fell to the third round. He's a bit of a tweener. Like, there is certainty Carl Brooks is going to play on the inside, and he's proven to be a pass rusher that can win on the outside. Against lower level competition, but move him inside, and in theory, there's more favorable matchups against guards versus tackles. So I'm really excited about Carl Brooks. And, if the Eagles don't draft defensive interior in the first round, I hope they wait till the third and draft a Carl Brooks. I'd love to see him go to Kansas City, be paired up with someone like a Chris Jones. Maybe the Bills could be interested in him, and maybe he could be kind of what Ed Oliver was supposed to be coming out of Houston. We've seen some of from Ed Oliver. So I think he's a guy that, especially if he goes to a contender, he's going to make that fan base happy right away. And then Moro Ojomo, not a guy that I really have mocked a whole lot, just because I don't really hear a whole lot of chatter about him from other mocks and just Jeremiah Kuiper and just general league buzz, and he's not really tweeted about all that often either. So and you more often than not are mocking with what you hear. You're mocking with your ears, and you're putting big boards and position rankings together with your eyes. And I like Moro Ojomo, 6'3" maybe 6'2.5", 290 pounds, and man, he plays really, really quick. I think it was 88 percentile broad jump, 86 percentile vertical. Like, he plays with that explosiveness. Not the most gaudy 40 or anything like that, but I'm more worried about his quicks than his speed, considering he's coming out of his stance and he's getting into guards. Not quite Kalijah Cansey level, but he's getting into guards before they're ready for him. And he was always someone who graded out really well at Texas and was always a high-level run defender, knows how to shed blocks, which is really, really important. And then on top of that, pass rush win rate north of 18%. So yeah, maybe not the biggest guy, comparing him to Carl Brooks or Gervon Dexter, who's 310 pounds, Brooks at like 305. Ojomo was around that 290 mark. Yeah, but he makes up for it with some quicks and some explosive pass rush sets. And just the productions there at Texas, Big 12. I mean, Big 12 is kind of light on defensive, talent, and you can be a little hesitant to draft those guys early. But man, I think if he goes in the third round too, I think a team's getting a pretty solid immediate run defender who Again, can get off the line, fires his hands and his hips simultaneously, like he's technically sound, and the production is there. So I feel confident in drafting Ojomo somewhere within the top 100. Then we get Kobe Turner, and this has kind of been my guy all the way through the process. Literally, it was funny. I was going back and watching my way too early interior defensive line rankings, and the last two D linemen that I mentioned were Kalijah Cansey, which he's no longer an honorable mention, so definitely a big-time riser. And then Kobe Turner. And he was this transfer from the University of Richmond to Wake Forest, and he has just been a stud at every level, and year in and year out, like consistently really, really good, including this year at Wake. And, you know, I remember I put that video together right after the Clemson game, and Clemson's offensive line ended up being a problem. You know, it's like when you look back to week 1, that Thursday night opener between the Bills and the Rams, and the Bills pass rush looked like they were about to light the world on fire, and they did until Miller got hurt. But then it's like, okay, well, the Rams offensive line was way worse than what we knew at that point in the season. And that was kind of the same case with Clemson, where it's like, had I known then what I know now, I wouldn't have been as over the moon about it. But Kobe Turner had 10 pressures in that game, and he was tearing up Clemson. He had a couple of goal line stops there. Smaller guy for sure, so he's not for everybody. But he's just been a great football player along the way at multiple stops and year in and year out. So I'm just kind of buying into his football production, and he's a guy who's both great against the run and great as a pass rusher. Something's got to give there, and I think ultimately once he gets to the next level, maybe he's not a starter, but a situational pass rusher or just that third D tackle on an edge rotation for a team that covets that, I think he's a really interesting ad. Or he could be your day 3 sleeper here in the interior defensive lineman department. Because he is small, I'm really not expecting him to be anything that's over the moon when it comes to him being a run defender. But if you draft a guy in the 3rd round and he exceeds your expectations as a pass rusher, that's nothing to be upset about whatsoever. And one final note on Turner, you're seeing this on Tuesday if my schedule sticks. Tomorrow is Wake Forest Pro Day, so I'm really excited to see the numbers. Once we have that athletic measurables and get a feel for where Turner stacks up against other D tackles, then maybe his stock rises, or maybe he does kind of settle into that day 3 camp. Anyways, let's move on to Siaki Ika, one of the major losers for me out of the combine. I've always been high on Ika. I was going back to my early D tackle rank because I think he was number 3 behind Brazee and Jalen Carter, so definitely a big-time faller. He shows up at the combine 30 pounds less than his listed weight at Baylor, and he also just really underwhelms, has short arms, doesn't look smooth in the drills, and just kind of looks clunky. And him being 30 pounds lighter really is disappointing because I think he plays with decent lower body strength, but he doesn't really hold the line of scrimmage or play the run all that better. I was thinking, okay, well, you know, he's 360 pounds. That'll get figured out at the NFL level. Maybe that's Baylor, and that's not really their priority. And plus, maybe they're just not developing it. When was the last, like, headline D tackle to come out of Baylor, you know? And then now he's just kind of settling this, like, not that athletic, not the longest of arms, decent finesse pass rusher in the middle. I'm still hoping that there's potential to be worked out, maybe even gain some weight. But when you have a D tackle with as good a spin and swim move that Ika has, it's still a little interesting. So I had to put him on here at 10. And also, like, there's a big drop off. Like, I think we'll see a couple of these guys go in the 1st round. I could see as many as 3, you know, Carter, Cansey, and Brazee going in the 1st round. After that, you know, Benton and Mozzie Smith, Gervon Dexter, Carl Brooks, I think all probably going to go somewhere day 2. Maybe throw Jomo in there. Maybe Kobe Turner with a good pro day can sneak in there. But after that, you're talking about day 3 guys, and it's a steep drop off. So Jaquelin Roy maybe works his way into the mix there. Also Byron Young from Alabama, not Tennessee, but the Alabama D tackle. He's okay. But I'm still hoping there's some upside here with Ika. And considering he already has that little bit of a finesse skill set, that's an interesting thing to already have in the wheelbox, you know, in your toolbox. So I'm hoping that they can develop a little bit more on top of that once it gets to the NFL level. But obviously a huge loser out of the combine and someone who's fallen drastically in my opinion. But that is going to do it for my updated interior defensive line rankings. Let me know what you think about this group down below in the comment section. Who are, you know, 1 through 5 in your opinion? Who are maybe some names that should have been added into the honorable mentions? I'd love to hear your thoughts and your opinions down below in the comment section. Hopefully you all enjoyed. Hit that like button if you did, and subscribe if you're new and want to see more draft content in your life. But that is going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Teach, and I am signing off.